8. Welcome back to Sunrise City. We're coming to you live from Abeokuta, venue of the Ogun Investment Forum. Well, you know, if you want to, for those of you who like to do some things about housing, we've got the man for you. That's Mr. Daniel Adejobi. He's a commissioner for housing here in Ogun State. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning.
Well, your theme is agriculture and urban development. You have a chunk of that urban development when it has to do with housing.
Yes.
What is the story so far in Ogun State about housing, especially when you're near to Lagos?
Well, I want to say good morning again to the viewers and to the presenters. We've done a lot on the areas of housing. Housing is not a new thing, most especially in the old Western region. Winston Churchill will say, those who seek to plan the future must not forget the inheritance of the past. For anybody that forgets his past has no future. So we have inherited this provision of affordable housing from the old Western region. And this was being anchored by Ogun State Housing Corporation. By then it was Western Nigerian Housing Corporation. So since Ogun State was created, a lot has been done on the issue of provision of affordable housing. So what this present administration is doing is continuing what is already on ground. So when we came on board, there are many houses which were uncompleted in the housing estate we inherited. So we have to complete all those ones. Because when you get into a new organization, the best thing is to take the stock of what you have on ground. Vis-a-vis with what it is, then you can plan your own. And the reason why all these uncompleted housing units are completed is just to maintain the goodwill of Ministry of Housing. Because if the previous administration has collected some money from people and nothing comes forth in the by giving them the required number of housing units they require, you know, if we now come and we say we want to give them, they should come and pay again, we want to give them housing unit, we want to sell to them, they may say that, what about the one the previous administration have collected? But we believe government continues. It's only the personality that changes sometimes.
All right. We'll come to that in a bit, but let me bring this in because looking at this agriculture and urban development,
yes.
You know, some will say development in urban areas has a way of taking up a life of its own. Why not the rural areas? Are you leaving out the rural areas? Because by this definition or this tag, urban development, it suggests that maybe not so much focus on the rural areas. Is that the case?
Well, we are going to take care of the rural areas. You know, when you say urban development, before urban becomes urban, it should have been rural. So we want to do a sort of building mass housing across the 3 senatorial districts in the states. And this will reduce rural-urban drift. You know, when you don't get, when people cannot get the required shelter in the rural areas and so on, they come to the city. And if the plan of this administration is to, as we are doing urban development, we are also doing mass housing in the rural areas. And that is why we have opened new estates. You can't start a new estate in a developed area. You need a virgin land. And to this end, we have been able to establish many housing estates. For instance, we have one at Kobakpe, and Kobakpe housing estate is a few kilometers from Abeokuta. When that one is fully, though we are going to do certain services because we have come to realize that people at the high income level prefer to buy lands of their own and build houses of their own choice, rather than go and pay for the ready-made housing unit which has already been designed by another person and
would you want that to change?
Hello?
So that they can go for the ones built by the state, like the mass housing schemes?
Mass housing scheme, from what we have from experience, many high-income people don't buy into it. It's only the low-level, low-income, and the medium-income group that buys into all this one. So, but on that area also, we've been able to open up many housing estates across the 3 senatorial districts. For instance, in Ogun West, we have Agbara housing estate, and that was a virgin land which was opened up by this administration. Also, in Ogun East, we have Makun. It's a complete settlement entirely. So after we have fully completed all these housing units, you know, it's going to help our people.
One question a host of people will ask is affordability. It would seem that your focus mostly on in urban development is on housing estates in terms of, you know, building estates, but affordability is one question. And then for those people who had bought land in a particular area, you know, what sort of planning was there for them, in the sense that was there electricity, water, just basic amenities? Do you have roads? You know, what are the measures you're also taking so that you don't have shanties developing in, you know, in different places across Ogun State?
Well, this administration, as I've told you, our passion for housing development. And in all our estates, most especially the new ones we are establishing, we make sure that there is provision for necessary infrastructure and basic amenities.
That's for the estates?
Yes, for the estates.
How do people afford that? Maybe we should take a question after the other. How do you ensure that those who truly need it are the ones who are buying up that place? Do you have a scheme for them, or they have to pay at once?
Some have to pay at once, if you have the capacity to pay. Some will have to pay instrumentally, and some will have to pay on mortgage basis. That will make the housing unit accessible to them.
So you do have a mortgage scheme?
We have already introduced mortgage scheme now, so that most especially people at the low level can key into our housing program, so that they can afford to buy. Because by them paying instrumentally, it will give them the opportunity of having the housing unit, because majority of them cannot pay on cash and carry basis. Though they need the house, but they cannot pay at once. That is why, to make it easy for them to access the housing unit, we have to introduce mortgage. We give them advantage of paying for between 10 and 20 years, depending on your age.
10 and 20 years?
Yes.
Is that across board, or how does it work? How do they get to participate in that?
No, as I now, as I speak, majority, more than 90% of the civil servants contribute to the National Housing Fund, because that is the basic requirement for you to enjoy the mortgage system of payment. I think it's 2.5% of your basic salary they pay every month. And it's this gesture is not only meant for the civil servant, but some other public people.
Who don't contribute, or what?
No, what I mean is that anybody can enjoy it.
Okay.
But the basic thing is that you must be contributing to the National Housing Fund, whether you are a civil servant, whether you are artisan, or anybody.
So that contribution
we entitle you to
okay.
take loan to buy any housing unit of your choice.
All right, that's interesting. Thank you also for coming on. Mr. Daniel Adejobi is a commissioner for housing here in Ogun State. We'll be back after this break. We've got another perspective coming up today on the program. Please join us again.